Rudy Wagner's fingers tightened around the doorframe of the master bedroom as he watched his wife methodically dismantle their marriage. Each designer garment Mindy pulled from their shared closet represented another fissure in their foundation, another betrayal that had culminated in this moment. You know what your problem is, Rudy? Mindy's manicured hands yanked a Saint Laurent blazer from its hanger, the metal scraping against the rod with a screech. You lack vision. You're content with this. She gestured dismissively at their bedroom, which most would consider luxurious by conventional standards. Rudy's jaw clenched, his dark eyes tracking her movements as she stuffed the blazer into one of the 4 Louis Vuitton suitcases spread across their bed, suitcases he had purchased for her the previous Christmas. 3 years of marriage, and that's your profound insight? 3 wasted years, Mindy corrected, her voice dripping with contempt. She paused at her jewelry box, methodically removing pieces he had given her over the years. Do you know what Cameron said when he showed me his summer house in the Hamptons? He said, "This is just the beginning." She turned to face him, her perfectly styled blonde hair swinging with the movement. When's the last time you said something like that to me? When's the last time you showed me anything but mediocrity? The mention of Cameron Douglas made Rudy's blood run cold. CEO of Douglas Technologies, Cameron had been Mindy's most prominent client at her law firm for the past year. Rudy had noticed the late-night calls, the weekend emergency meetings, the sudden business trips. He confronted her 2 weeks ago, and her response had been to serve him with divorce papers. A software developer, Mindy continued, her lip curling as she spat out the words. The words left her mouth as though they tasted bitter. That's all you'll ever be, writing code in your little cubicle at Microtech Solutions. Thinking a promotion to senior developer is something to celebrate. She laughed, the sound hollow and cruel. Do you know what Cameron's net worth is? Do you have any idea what kind of life he's offering me? Rudy's mind flashed back to their days at Boston University. Her, an ambitious pre-law student. Him, juggling computer science classes with 2 part-time jobs. He believed in her. This and worked extra shifts at the campus IT department and a local Best Buy to help put her through law school. They lived in a cramped studio apartment, sharing instant noodles and dreams of the future. I supported you through law school, he said, his voice deadly quiet. Every internship, every networking event, every time you needed new clothes to look the part, I was there. Oh, please. Mindy rolled her eyes, moving to her vanity. You want a medal for doing what any half-decent husband would do. The difference is, other men would have used that as a stepping stone, not an excuse to stay comfortable in mediocrity. She pulled off her wedding ring, the diamond catching the light as she tossed it onto the dresser with a metallic clink. Cameron Douglas is offering me everything you couldn't. Mansions, yachts, a real future. Not this suburban nightmare. Rudy stepped into the room, his presence filling the space with a tension that made Mindy pause momentarily in her packing. You'll regret this, he said, each word carefully measured and controlled. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. For a split second, something flickered across Mindy's face. Uncertainty, perhaps fear, but it vanished quickly, replaced by the same cold disdain she'd worn like armor these past weeks. The only thing I regret, she said, zipping up the last suitcase with decisive finality, is wasting 3 years with a loser. She pulled out her phone, perfectly manicured nails tapping out a message. The movers will arrive within the hour to collect the remainder of my belongings. I trust you can manage the divorce paperwork yourself, unless that proves too intricate for your programmer's intellect to comprehend, she remarked with a smirk, hoisting one of the suitcases. Cameron's chauffeur is parked outside. Don't trouble yourself with the luggage. Philippe will see to it. Rudy remained motionless as she guided the 2 suitcases past him. A trace of her costly perfume, Clive Christian, yet another present he had given her, reached his nostrils, and he felt his hands clench into fists at his sides. The muscles in his jaw tightened as he observed her halt at the doorway. You know what the irony is, Mindy, she said, casting a glance back at him. When we first met, I believed you had promise. I thought you would develop, transform, become someone greater. Instead, you're precisely the same individual you were in college. Cautious, foreseeable, mediocre. She shook her head. Cameron constructed an empire. What have you constructed, Rudy? What imprint will you leave upon the world? The click of her heels resonating down the corridor reverberated through the home, followed by the heavy thud of the front door shutting. Rudy stepped to the window, observing as a uniformed driver stowed her bags into a polished black Mercedes S-Class. Mindy did not glance back as she settled into the rear seat, her phone already pressed to her ear, likely phoning Cameron to boast about her seamless departure. As the vehicle drove off, Rudy's reflection gazed back at him from the glass, his sharp features fixed like stone, his dark eyes ablaze with a ferocity that might have given Mindy pause about her remarks, had she taken the time to truly regard him today. He walked to the dresser and picked up the abandoned wedding band. The diamond captured the light once more, but instead of splendor, all he perceived was decay. He tugged open the top drawer and let the ring fall inside, his resolution already solidifying in his thoughts. Mindy believed she understood him. She had scarcely scratched the surface. She wished to discuss potential, to talk of leaving impressions on the world. He would show her the world. He would show her what real potential looked like. He would show her what happened to people who underestimated him, to those who betrayed him. Rudy pulled out his phone, scrolling through his contacts until he found the name he wanted. The line rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Sam, I need you to come over. We could have initial funding within a month. Full infrastructure and team build-out within 6 months." Jerome signaled for the check. "The question is, Mr. Wagner, what's your real goal here?" Rudy's fingers traced the edge of his untouched water glass. "Let's say I have a vision of my own, one that requires certain pieces to be in place. And those pieces would coincidentally align with Douglas Technologies' market position." Jerome's smile was knowing. "You wouldn't be the first entrepreneur motivated by personal vengeance. But if we're going to work together, I need to know you can separate emotion from strategy." The waiter returned with the check, which Jerome signed without looking at the total. Rudy waited until they were alone again before speaking. "3 months ago, my wife told me I lacked vision," he said, his voice carrying a quiet intensity that made Jerome lean forward slightly. "She said I'd never build anything meaningful, never leave my mark on the world. She thought she knew me, my limits, my capabilities, my ambitions." His smile was razor-sharp. She was wrong. Jerome studied him for a long moment. "Sterling and Ross doesn't back revenge fantasies," he said carefully. "We back viable businesses with strong potential for market dominance. Why can't it be both?" Rudy stood, adjusting his perfectly tailored suit. "The best revenge isn't destruction, Mr. Fisher. It's success. Massive, undeniable, industry-changing success." Jerome rose as well, extending his hand. "Call me Jerome. I'll have my office draw up the preliminary paperwork. We should move quickly. Opportunities like this don't stay secret for long." Rudy's handshake was firm, confident. "One more thing," he stated. "I want Sam Nunez as my head of operations. He has been with this project from the beginning, and I trust him." Don Jerome then produced his business card, handing it to Rudy. "Welcome to the big leagues, Mr. Wagner. I hope you are ready for what comes next." As they departed the restaurant, Rudy paused on the sidewalk, watching Jerome's town car pull away. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Another glossy article about Mindy and Cameron's perfect life, their perfect future, their perfect plans. He archived the alert without reading it. Let them enjoy their moment in the spotlight. Let them think they had written him off as a footnote in their story. His time would come, and when it did, they would learn what real vision looked like. Rudy hailed a cab, his mind already racing with plans, strategies, and the precise calculations of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The game was just beginning, and he intended to play it to win, no matter the cost. He had work to do. The fluorescent lights of the Microtech Solutions office buzzed overhead as Sam Nunez made his way through the maze of cubicles, 2 cups of coffee clutched in his hands. It was well past midnight, but he could see the glow of a monitor from Rudy's workspace, just like every night for the past 3 months. "You are going to kill yourself, man," Sam said, setting one of the cups down next to Rudy's keyboard. Lines of code reflected off his friend's glasses, his fingers moving across the keyboard with mechanical precision. "When is the last time you went home?" "I am home," Rudy replied without looking up, his voice flat and empty. Energy drink cans surrounded his workspace like metallic sentries. "The cleaning crew is starting to charge me rent." Sam pulled up a chair, studying his friend's profile. Dark circles shadowed Rudy's eyes, and his usually clean-shaven face sported several days' worth of stubble. His shirt, once crisp and professional, was wrinkled from too many hours spent at his desk. For hours, you were hunched over the keyboard. You saw it, didn't you? Sam asked carefully, already knowing the answer but needing to address it all the same. The glow of the screen illuminated Rudy's fingers, which paused over the keyboard for a fraction of a second before resuming their relentless pace. Society pages, front and center, Rudy read aloud. Tech Titan weds rising legal star. Nice alliteration, don't you think? The wedding photos had been everywhere. Mindy radiant in a custom Vera Wang gown. Cameron Douglas beaming like a man who had just acquired his newest trophy. The ceremony at the Boston Harbor Hotel had been the social event of the season, with politicians, CEOs, and celebrities in attendance. And the honeymoon photos, Rudy continued, his voice taking on an edge that made Sam shift uncomfortably. Very tasteful. Nothing says true love like posting every moment of your Maldives getaway on Instagram. The infinity pool shots were particularly inspired. Rudy, Sam started, but his friend cut him off. Did you see the interview? Rudy's fingers flew faster across the keyboard, the clacking growing more intense. The one where she talked about finding her soulmate and her biggest client? About how sometimes you have to follow your heart, even if it means breaking another? He laughed, the sound devoid of humor. Very poetic. The comments section loved it. Sam took a sip of his coffee, choosing his next words carefully. You can't keep doing this to yourself. 18-hour days, living on caffeine and spite. It's not sustainable. You don't understand what I'm building here, Sam. Rudy finally turned away from his screen, his eyes fever bright with exhaustion and determination. This isn't just another piece of software. This platform will revolutionize financial analysis. It can predict market trends with 93% accuracy, identify patterns human analysts would miss, process millions of data points in seconds. And this has nothing to do with proving something to Mindy? Sam asked, raising an eyebrow. Rudy's expression hardened. This has everything to do with it. Proving something, not merely to her, but to myself, and to everyone who had ever looked at me and seen nothing but a caged monkey in a cubicle. Sam leaned back in his chair, studying the lines of code on Rudy's screen. After 15 years of friendship, he knew when Rudy had locked onto something significant. They had met in their first computer science class at Boston University, bonding over late-night debugging sessions and shared dreams of building something meaningful. My cousin, Jerome, Sam said after a moment of contemplation. He works for Sterling and Ross, the venture capital firm. Rudy's attention sharpened. Sam nodded. They're always looking for the next big thing in fintech. Jerome's been urging me to introduce him to any promising developers. He pulled out his phone. Let me set up a meeting. Sam cut him off. You want to prove something? Fine. But do it right. You've got something special here. I can see it. But you need backing, connections, infrastructure. He began typing out a message. Jerome's good people. He'll see what I see. Rudy turned back to his screen, but his typing had slowed. When? Tomorrow. Lunch. Sam stood up, gathering his empty coffee cup. And you're going home now. Shower, shave, sleep in an actual bed. You're not meeting my cousin looking like a revenge-coding hermit. A ghost of a smile touched Rudy's lips, the first Sam had seen in months. Revenge-coding hermit. That's a new one. Yeah, well, I'm running out of ways to tell you you look like. Sam paused at the edge of the cubicle. This could be big, Rudy. But you need to be smart about it. Strategic. Rudy saved his work and began shutting down his computer. Trust me, he said, his voice taking on a tone Sam had never heard before. Cold, calculated, certain. Strategy is exactly what I have in mind. The private dining room at Moo Restaurant in Beacon Hill hummed with quiet conversation and the gentle clink of expensive flatware against bone china. Jerome Fisher maintained his relaxed smile as Jerome studied the man seated across the table, mentally revising several assumptions he had formed prior to their meeting. Sam had described his friend as brilliant yet intense, driven, but potentially unstable following his divorce. Jerome had anticipated someone desperate, perhaps even unhinged, the sort of developer who might believe they had constructed the next Facebook from their basement. Instead, Rudy Wagner presented himself as controlled, focused, and utterly convinced of his creation's worth. Walk me through it again, Jerome said, setting down his fork. The remnants of a perfectly cooked Wagyu steak lay forgotten on his plate. The platform integrates with existing trading systems, Rudy replied, his own meal scarcely touched. Seamlessly, but that's merely the foundation. The true innovation lies in the predictive analytics engine. He produced a tablet and slid it across the table. These are test results from the past 6 months. The algorithm identified market trends weeks before human analysts detected them. Jerome scrolled through the data, his eyebrows rising incrementally with each page. 15 years in venture capital had taught him to distinguish between hopeful projections and solid results. These figures were not merely good, they were revolutionary. Who else has seen this? He asked, his mind already racing through potential competitors, market positions, and exit strategies. Besides Sam? No one, Rudy answered, his dark eyes locking with Jerome's. I am very particular about whom I trust with my work. A waiter appeared silently at Jerome's elbow. Would either gentleman care for dessert? Coffee, Jerome replied, and get Bobby Yates on the phone for me. The waiter nodded and withdrew. Rudy's expression remained neutral, but Jerome detected a subtle narrowing of his eyes at the mention of Bobby's name. Bobby Yates is a legend in Boston tech, Jerome explained, though he suspected Rudy was already aware. He built 3 companies from scratch and sold them for billions. These days, he's semi-retired, but he still mentors a select few. He smiled. Projects like yours. I appreciate the interest, Rudy said carefully, but I'm not looking to sell my platform to the highest bidder. I have specific goals in mind. Jerome leaned back as the waiter returned with his coffee. Let me guess. This has something to do with Cameron Douglas. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Sam's been talking. Sam didn't have to. Jerome stirred his coffee, the silver spoon making no sound against the cup. I do my homework, Mr. Wagner. Your ex-wife's very public marriage to one of Boston's most prominent CEOs made quite a splash. The timing of your platform's development isn't exactly subtle. He expected denial, maybe embarrassment. Instead, Rudy's lips curved into a smile that never reached his eyes. Then you understand why I'm particular about my partners. Perfectly. Jerome set down his spoon. Sterling and Ross isn't interested in quick flips or passive investments. We build empires. He pulled out his phone as it buzzed. Ah, Bobby's free. Perfect timing. He put the phone on speaker and placed it on the table. Bobby, Jerome Fisher. I'm sitting with someone you need to meet. This better be good, Jerry. Bobby Yates's gravelly voice filled the private dining room. I was about to tee off. Trust me, your golf game can wait. Jerome nodded at Rudy. I'm with Rudy Wagner. He's developed a financial analysis platform that's showing 93% accuracy in market predictions. A low whistle came through the speaker. No kidding? Send me the specs. Jerome forwarded the data from the tablet. The line went quiet for several minutes as Bobby reviewed the information. Finally, his voice returned, carrying a note of genuine interest. Kid, you've got something special here. But you need to think bigger. Bigger? Rudy asked, his voice carrying an edge of calculated curiosity. Much bigger. This isn't just about beating the market. This is about changing how the entire game is played. Papers rustled in the background. Jerry, what's Sterling and Ross's? In this pivotal moment, Jerome locked eyes with Rudy from across the table. We are very interested in acquiring a significant position, he stated, subject to due diligence, of course. Bobby's voice then took on a resolute and commanding tone over the speaker. Kid, if you're serious about this, I want in. Not merely as an investor, but as a mentor. You possess the technical brilliance, but the technology world is not solely about code. It is about strategy, timing, and knowing precisely when to strike and when to wait. Rudy's expression remained perfectly composed, yet Jerome detected a glint of something perilous in his eyes. I am a quick study, Mr. Yates, Rudy replied. The older man's voice corrected him firmly. Bobby, and I believe you are. Jerry, arrange a proper meeting for next week at my office. The line then went dead. Jerome pocketed his phone, studying Rudy with a newfound sense of respect. Bobby Yates does not waste his time on lost causes. If he is interested, this could move very quickly indeed. How quickly? Rudy inquired. We could secure initial funding within a month. A full infrastructure and team build-out could be completed within 6 months. Jerome signaled for the check. The question is, Mr. Wagner, what is your real goal here? Rudy's fingers traced the rim of his untouched water glass. Let us say I have a vision of my own, one that requires certain pieces to be in place. And those pieces would, quite coincidentally, align with Doug Technologies' market position. Jerome's smile was knowing. You would not be the first entrepreneur motivated by personal vengeance. But if we are going to work together, I need to know you can separate emotion from strategy. The waiter returned with the check, which Jerome signed without even glancing at the total. Rudy waited until they were completely alone again before speaking. 3 months ago, he began, his voice carrying a quiet intensity that made Jerome lean forward slightly. My wife told me I lacked vision. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. She said I would never build anything meaningful, that I would never leave my mark on the world. She thought she knew me, my limits, my capabilities, my ambitions. His smile was razor-sharp. She was wrong. Jerome studied him for a long, silent moment. Sterling, and Ross does not back revenge fantasies. He said carefully, we back viable businesses with strong potential for market dominance. Why can't it be both? Rudy stood, adjusting his perfectly tailored suit. The best revenge isn't destruction, Mr. Fisher, it's success. Massive, undeniable, industry-changing success. Jerome Rose stood as well, extending his hand. Call me Jerome. I'll have my office draw up the preliminary paperwork. We should move quickly. Opportunities like this don't stay secret for long. Rudy's handshake was firm, confident. One more thing, he said. I want Sam Nunez as my head of operations. He's been with this project from the beginning, and I trust him. Don Jerome pulled out his business card, handing it to Rudy. Welcome to the big leagues, Mr. Wagner. I hope you're ready for what comes next. As they left the restaurant, Rudy paused on the sidewalk, watching Jerome's town car pull away. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Another glossy article about Mindy and Cameron's perfect life, their perfect future, their perfect plans. He archived the alert without reading it. Let them enjoy their moment in the spotlight. Let them think they had written him off as a footnote in their story. His time would come, and when it did, they would learn what real vision looked like. Rudy hailed a cab, his mind already racing with plans, strategies, and the precise calculations of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The game was just beginning, and he intended to play it to win, no matter the cost. The 48th floor of the newly christened Wagner Analytics headquarters hummed with purpose. 3 years had transformed Rudy's vision from lines of code into an empire that commanded respect throughout Boston's financial district. The company's growth had been meteoric, from a small team working out of a shared office space to over 300 employees occupying prime real estate in the heart of the city. Sam Nunez surveyed the trading floor from his office, watching. Analysts and developers worked in perfect synchronization. As the head of operations, he had helped build this machine from the ground up, selecting each piece with surgical precision. The platform they developed had exceeded even their most optimistic projections, becoming an essential tool for hedge funds and investment banks across the country. His intercom buzzed. Mr. Nunez, Mr. Wagner would like to see you in his office. Sam found Rudy standing behind his desk, studying multiple screens displaying market data and company analytics. The past 3 years had changed his friend. Gone was the disheveled developer working 18-hour days in a cubicle. In his place stood a man who commanded attention, whose mere presence made people straighten their spines and choose their words carefully. You've seen the reports? Rudy asked without turning around. About Douglas Technologies. Sam closed the door behind him. Their stock dropped another 12% this morning. The vulnerability in their cloud security system is worse than initially reported. 8 major clients have terminated their contracts in the past month. Rudy's voice carried a note of calculated satisfaction. Their chief security officer resigned yesterday. No official statement yet, but our sources say he's cooperating with federal investigators. Sam moved closer to the screens, studying the data. Cameron's getting desperate. He's trying to raise capital by selling off non-core assets, but nobody's buying. The market smells blood. And Mindy. Rudy finally turned, his dark eyes gleaming with predatory interest. Promoted to general counsel 6 months ago. Sam pulled up another screen. She's been working overtime trying to contain the damage, but he hesitated. Our surveillance team intercepted something interesting. Sam retrieved a tablet from his briefcase. Emails between Mindy and several of Cameron's competitors. She's been feeding him insider information for years. Technical specifications, Bid details, customer. He perused the list detailing the kinds of information that would not be accessible through ordinary channels. Rudy accepted the tablet, scrolling through the evidence with methodical precision. Corporate espionage, he murmured, his lips curving into a cold smile. How fitting. He then inquired, have you shown this to anyone else? Only our most trusted analysts, came the reply. Bobby Yates suggested we bring in someone specific to handle this aspect. Sam pulled up another file. Jeanette Ritter, former prosecutor turned corporate lawyer. She has a reputation for being. He searched for the right word. Ruthless, Rudy supplied. I was going to say effective, Sam continued. She has never lost a major case, and she is known for turning evidence into weapons. Bobby says she has been looking for the right opportunity to take on Cameron Douglas. Rudy studied Jeanette's profile intently. Set up a meeting, he instructed. Then, handing the tablet back to Sam, he added, and ensure our own security is airtight. The moment we move on this, Cameron will try to retaliate. Already done, Sam assured him. Bobby's team conducts weekly penetration testing. Our systems are locked down tighter than Fort Knox. Good, Rudy said, turning back to his screens. Because we are not just going to expose them, Sam. We are going to take everything. Sam recognized the tone. It was the same one he had heard in that private dining room 3 years earlier, when Rudy had laid out his vision to Jerome Fisher. Back then, a part of Sam had wondered if his friend's ambitions were fueled purely by revenge. Now, he understood. Revenge was merely the catalyst. What Rudy had built was something far more significant. There is something else, Sam interjected. Cameron's board is growing nervous. They have hired Bernadette Short as a special advisor, the corporate raider. Rudy's interest sharpened immediately. They must be truly desperate. She has a reputation for protecting companies from hostile takeovers. Some people call her the corporate shield. Every shield has its weak points, Rudy declared, pulling up new data on his screens. Have our analysts compile everything we have on her past cases. I wish to understand her strategy completely and thoroughly. It is already underway. Sam moved towards the door, then hesitated. Rudy, are you certain about this? Once we embark on this path, there is no turning back. I have been certain since the day Mindy walked out that door. Rudy's voice was like steel wrapped in silk. She and Cameron believed they were composing the conclusion to their perfect narrative. They overlooked one crucial element. What is that? That every story has a villain. They simply failed to recognize which role they were playing. After Sam departed, Rudy gazed out at the city skyline, the reflection of his empire superimposing itself over the view of Boston's financial district. 3 years prior, Mindy had scoffed at his potential, dismissing him as nothing more than a caged monkey in a cubicle. Now, his platform dictated market movements. His algorithm shaped investment strategies for the most influential players in finance. His phone vibrated with a message from Bobby Yates, requesting a meeting to discuss acquisition targets. Another piece was falling into place. Rudy had spent 3 years building his strength, assembling his resources, and positioning his pieces on the board. Now, it was time to demonstrate to Cameron and Mindy precisely what kind of future he had constructed. Jeanette Ritter's reputation preceded her like a razor's edge. She sat in the conference room of Wagner Analytics, impeccably attired in a Tom Ford suit that conveyed both affluence and precision. Her silver hair was styled in a severe bob that complemented her sharp features. The evidence of corporate espionage lay before her, arranged in meticulous detail. Well, she said, closing the final file with deliberate care. This is quite the smoking gun you have uncovered, Mr. Wagner. Rudy sat at the head of the conference table, with Bobby Yates and Sam flanking him like seasoned generals. Can you utilize it? Oh, I can do far more than merely utilize it. Jeanette's smile was all teeth and tactical advantage. This level of corporate espionage, combined with the security vulnerabilities in their primary product, means Douglas Technologies is not just vulnerable. It is a wound waiting to be exploited. Exploited? We need this handled perfectly. Bobby interjected. Cameron's got friends in high places. So do I, Jeanette declared, pulling out her own tablet. And unlike Mrs. Douglas, I understand the difference between gathering intelligence and breaking federal law. She turned to Rudy. You want to take the company, every last share? Then we do this my way. Clean, clinical, by the book. She began typing. First, We need to expand your team. I want young Bird as our compliance officer. The former SEC investigator? Sam asked. The very same. He's been consulting for private firms since leaving the commission. More importantly, he knows where all the bodies are buried in the tech sector. Jeanette looked up. We'll also need Rita Hayden for PR. Bobby nodded approvingly. The media whisperer. She handled the Morgan Technologies merger last year. Exactly. When we move, we need to control the narrative completely. Rita is the best in the business at steering public opinion. Jeanette turned back to Rudy. This has to be perfect. One misstep, and Cameron's lawyers will be all over us with injunctions and countersuits. Money's no object, Rudy stated. Whatever resources you need, they're yours. Good. Because we're not just going to win, we're going to make it impossible for them to fight back. Jeanette began outlining her strategy, her words precise as surgical instruments. First, we use Wagner Analytics platform to predict and counter every possible defense they might mount. Your algorithms give us a significant advantage there. Sam pulled up market projections on the main screen. We've been running scenarios for weeks. The platform shows their stock dropping another 20% once the full extent of their security issues becomes public. Perfect. That's when we start acquiring their competitors. Jeanette made more notes. Bobby, how many of Douglas's rivals do you have relationships with? Half a dozen major players. 3 of them are already interested in potential deals. Lock them down. Every acquisition. This development strengthens our position while weakening Cameron's. She turned back to Rudy. Meanwhile, I shall prepare the legal groundwork. When we move, it will be with overwhelming force across multiple fronts, leaving no room for escape. What about Mindy? Sam inquired carefully. Jeanette's smile turned predatory. Mrs. Douglas made a critical error when she decided to play corporate spy. The evidence you've gathered doesn't merely implicate Douglas Technologies. It proves she personally facilitated the theft of trade secrets. When this information becomes public, she won't simply be fighting to save her company. She'll be fighting to stay out of prison. Rudy's expression remained impassive, yet something dark flickered in his eyes. She always was ambitious. Ambition without wisdom is merely greed with a better wardrobe, Jeanette remarked as she gathered her files. I'll have contracts for Young and Rita prepared by tomorrow. Once they're on board, we move to phase 2. Which is? Bobby asked. We start hunting, Jeanette stated, standing and smoothing her jacket. Mr. Wagner, when I'm finished, you won't just own Douglas Technology. You'll own everything Cameron and his wife thought they could take from you. After she departed, Bobby turned to Rudy. She's expensive. She's worth it, Rudy affirmed. Bobby studied his protege thoughtfully. You know, 3 years ago when Jerome first contacted me about your platform, I believed I was merely backing another promising startup. I didn't realize I was helping forge a weapon. Not a weapon, Rudy corrected. An instrument of justice. Sam checked his buzzing phone. Young's assistant just confirmed he's interested in meeting. Rita Hayden's team wants to schedule a call for tomorrow morning. Arrange it, Rudy said, standing. His presence filled the room with quiet authority. It's time to show Cameron and Mindy exactly what a software developer can build. The next 2 months progressed with the precision of a master chess player positioning their endgame. Young, with his steel-trap mind and encyclopedic knowledge of SEC regulations, methodically built their case. In the case of Rita Hayden, she skillfully worked her media connections, planting seeds of doubt regarding the stability of Douglas Technology without ever appearing to target them directly. Cameron's response came swiftly. Bernard A. Short, the corporate raider turned defender, launched an aggressive strategy to shore up Douglas's defenses. She orchestrated share buybacks, initiated cost-cutting measures, and attempted to reassure major clients about the security issues. Sheck, Goodyoung commented during one late-night strategy session, his lean frame, that of a former SEC investigator, bent over market reports, his wire-rimmed glasses reflecting the data streams. But she's fighting yesterday's war. Rita nodded. Her PR experts were already catching the patterns. Every move they make, we've already predicted and countered. The Wagner Analytics platform is giving us a tactical advantage they can't match. Through Bobby's connections, Rudy began acquiring Douglas's competitors with surgical precision. Each purchase was structured to appear independent, unconnected to any larger strategy. But piece by piece, the noose tightened. Silicon Valley Solutions just accepted our offer. Sam reported one morning, entering Rudy's office with fresh acquisition documents. That's the third major competitor this month. How did Cameron react? Mindy tried to block it with regulatory challenges. Jeanette shut her down in less than 6 hours. Sam's smile held a touch of admiration. I almost feel sorry for them. They don't realize they're not just fighting us. They're fighting an algorithm that can predict their every move. Don't feel sorry for them, Rudy replied, his voice carrying the weight of 3 years of calculated patience. They chose this path the moment they decided to underestimate me. The pieces continued to fall into place. Young's team uncovered more evidence of corporate espionage, each discovery adding ammunition to their arsenal. Rita's media strategy began bearing fruit, with technology blogs and financial news outlets raising questions. Concerning the future of Douglas Technology, Bernadette short-marshaled every resource within her extensive arsenal to mount a defense. She enlisted crisis management teams, initiated aggressive public relations campaigns, and attempted to arrange emergency mergers with allied corporations. Yet, at each juncture, she was outflanked by an adversary who appeared to foresee her every strategy. She is growing desperate, Jeanette remarked during a strategy session, observing Douglas's most recent press conference. Observe her posture. She is aware that she is losing ground. Cameron's board is becoming anxious, Young added. In the past week, 3 directors have discreetly divested substantial portions of their shares. The scavengers can sense the scent of blood. Mindy, now serving as legal counsel for Douglas, labored tirelessly to stem the mounting crisis. However, her legal stratagems, once so potent, were repeatedly obstructed by Jeanette's superior planning and the predictive capabilities of Wagner Analytics. It is nearly poetic, Rita commented, as yet another of Mindy's attempts to secure an injunction collapsed. She persists in employing the same tactics that once brought her success, failing to recognize that the rules of the game have fundamentally changed. The decisive blow fell when Bobby secured their most significant acquisition to date, Quantum Security Systems, Douglas's principal competitor in the cloud security sector. The transaction sent reverberations throughout the industry and precipitated a further decline in Douglas's stock value. They are on the verge of collapse, Sam reported, delivering the most recent market analysis to Rudy's office. One more concerted effort, and the entire structure will crumble. Rudy stood at his desk, contemplating the empire he had constructed. Wagner Analytics had surpassed all projections, its platform revolutionizing the methods by which markets were analyzed and forecast. More than that, it had become the vehicle for his meticulously orchestrated retribution. Dispatch the notifications, he directed. It is time for the board to convene. As his team dispersed to execute the final arrangements, Rudy permitted himself a moment of reflection. 3 years ago, Mindy had walked out of their life, convinced she was trading up for a better future. She had seen him as nothing more than a stepping stone, a chapter to be closed on her way to greater things. Now, he would show her and Cameron exactly what kind of future he had built, one where their perfect world would crumble, piece by carefully calculated piece. The time for waiting was over. Tomorrow, the real game would begin. The timing was impeccable. At 9 a.m. on a Monday morning, when markets opened and traders settled into their desks, Wagner Analytics, backed by Sterling and Ross and a consortium of strategic investors, launched their hostile takeover bid for Douglas Technologies. Cameron Douglas was in the middle of his morning executive briefing when his CFO burst into the conference room, face ashen. "Sir, you need to see this immediately." The offering document landed on the table with a decisive thud. Cameron's hands trembled slightly as he read through the terms, his usual polished demeanor cracking with each page. "Get the board here now," he barked at his assistant. "And someone find my wife." Mindy arrived 20 minutes later, her Hermes scarf slightly askew, a small but telling break in her typically perfect appearance. She grabbed the documents, her legal training kicking in as she scanned the contents. "This can't be happening," she whispered, then caught herself as other board members began filing into the emergency meeting. Her mask of professional confidence slipped back into place, but her knuckles were white as she gripped her Mont Blanc pen. Cameron paced at the head of the boardroom table, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the marble floor. "They can't do this," he shouted, turning to Mindy. "Find a way to stop it." "I'm trying to reach Bernadette," Mindy said, her fingers flying over her phone's keyboard. But Wagner's team has filed injunctions blocking our most obvious defensive moves. It's like they knew exactly what we would do. Her voice was cut off as breaking news alerts began flooding their phones. Young journalists had meticulously gathered evidence of corporate espionage, which had been strategically leaked to select media outlets. CNBC was already running the story. Bloomberg had a detailed exposé ready to go. The Wall Street Journal's investigation painted a damning picture of systematic trade secret theft. The stocks were in free fall. The CFO reported, staring at his trading terminal, down 30% and still dropping. Trading might be halted if this continues. Impossible, Cameron sputtered. We have fail-safes, contingencies, all neutralized. Bernardet Short interrupted, striding into the room with a stack of reports. Wagner's team filed simultaneous actions in multiple jurisdictions. Every defensive strategy we prepared has been preemptively blocked. How? Cameron slammed his fist on the table. How could they possibly know? The platform, Mindy whispered, realization dawning on her face. His financial analysis platform. We thought it was just market prediction, but he's been using it too. She trailed off, the full scope of Rudy's strategy finally becoming clear. Bernardet spread documents across the table. Wagner Analytics hasn't just been preparing for this day. They've been simulating every possible response we might make. Their algorithms predicted our defensive strategies before we even developed them. The board members exchanged worried glances. These were experienced business leaders, people who had weathered countless corporate storms. But this was different. This wasn't just a hostile takeover. It was a perfectly orchestrated assault on every front simultaneously. What about our major shareholders? Cameron demanded. Already jumping ship, the CFO replied. The corporate espionage evidence, it's comprehensive. Nobody wants to be associated with it. It's all lies. Cameron roared. Manufactured evidence. We'll sue for defamation, for market manipulation, for what, Mr. Douglas? Jeanette Ritter's voice cut in sharply. A commanding voice cut through the chaos as she entered the boardroom, flanked by her legal team. Please, do elaborate on your defense strategy. I'm particularly interested in how you will explain Mrs. Douglas's emails to your competitors' technical teams. Mindy's face went pale. She had used private servers, encrypted communications, cutouts, and proxies. There was no way they could have uncovered them. Amazing what a properly motivated SEC investigator can uncover. Jeanette continued, nodding to young Bird as he joined her. Especially when provided with sophisticated data analysis tools and, shall we say, a comprehensive understanding of corporate malfeasance. Get out. Cameron pointed at the door. This is a private board meeting. Actually, one of the board members spoke up. Miss Ritter was invited by me. Others around the table nodded in agreement. In light of these revelations, the board has a fiduciary duty to consider all options. Options? Cameron laughed incredulously. I built this company. I am this company. And you've destroyed its value through mismanagement and illegal activities. Another board member countered. Our stock is in free fall. Our major clients are fleeing, and we're facing potential federal investigations. The Wagner Analytics offer includes provisions protecting the board from shareholder lawsuits, Jeanette added smoothly. Quite generous terms, actually. My client believes in facilitating smooth transitions. Mindy stood up, her legal instincts screaming for damage control. We can fight this. The evidence won't hold up in court. We can't. Mrs. Douglas, Young interrupted, his voice carrying the weight of his SEC experience. I suggest you contact a criminal defense attorney immediately. The board meeting devolved into chaos after that. Cameron alternated between threats and desperate bargaining. Mindy tried to mount legal arguments that crumbled against Jeanette's superior preparation. Board members huddled with their personal attorneys, reading the writing on the wall. And through it all, the tension mounted as the fate of the company hung in the balance. Wagner Analytics stock continued its ascent as Douglas Technologies plummeted. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of emergency meetings, desperate phone calls, and crumbling defenses. Cameron's empire, built over decades of aggressive expansion and cutthroat tactics, was unraveling thread by thread. Bernadette Short sat in her office, reviewing the latest market data with growing admiration for her opponent's strategy. Every move they had planned, every countermeasure they had prepared, had been anticipated and neutralized before they could even implement them. Her phone buzzed, a private number she recognized. "Have you made your decision?" Rudy Wagner's voice was calm, controlled. "Your offer is compelling." Bernadette's eyes flickered to the contract on her desk. A senior position at Wagner Analytics, with compensation that made her Douglas Technologies' salary look like pocket change. "You recognize a winning side when you see one," Rudy said. "That's why you've survived so long in this business. Cameron won't survive this." It wasn't a question. That was never the plan. Bernadette signed the contract with a flourish. "I'll see you Monday morning." Across town, Cameron was holding court in his penthouse office, surrounded by the remnants of his executive team. Empty coffee cups and discarded takeout containers testified to hours of desperate strategizing. "The Singapore investors," his CFO began, "pulled out an hour ago." Mindy's voice was hoarse from hours of emergency calls. "They've seen the evidence. Nobody's willing to touch us. Evidence that shouldn't exist." Cameron hurled a crystal tumbler against the wall. "You assured me those communications were secure." "They were." Mindy's composure finally cracked. "Everything was routed through private servers, encrypted. Yet somehow your ex-husband has copies of everything." Cameron's face was mottled with rage. "Every email. Every technical specification you passed to me. Every piece of insider information that helped crush our competitors? Don't you dare pin this all on me," Mindy snarled. "You were the one who wanted those trade secrets. You were the one who—" "Enough," their general counsel interrupted. "This conversation needs to stop now. Given the likelihood of criminal charges, anything you say to each other could be used as evidence." Mindy's laugh held an edge of hysteria. "This morning we were discussing expansion plans. Now we're talking about criminal charges." The evidence young Bird leaked. The general counsel spread his hands helplessly. "It's comprehensive. Federal prosecutors are already involved. The SEC. Get out." Cameron's voice was deadly quiet. "All of you. Out." As his team filed out, Cameron stared at the cityscape that had once been his domain. His phone buzzed with a message from his biggest shareholder. They were supporting Wagner's takeover bid. One by one, the pillars of his empire were crumbling. Mindy retreated to her office, her perfect world dissolving around her. She picked up her phone, scrolling to Rudy's number, her finger hovering over the dial button. "He won't answer." Her assistant's voice made her jump. "Trust me, I've tried. Every call gets routed to M. Ritter's office." Mindy's hand dropped to her desk. Of course he wouldn't answer. This was what she created, this ruthless, unstoppable force that now threatened to destroy everything she'd built. She opened her browser, searching for news about Wagner Analytics. The company's rise had been meteoric, its platform revolutionizing financial analysis. And she'd walked away from it all, convinced she'd found something better. Her phone buzzed with a notification. The board was calling another emergency meeting. The subject line made her blood run cold. "Vote on Wagner Analytics acquisition offer." The Douglas Technologies boardroom had witnessed countless power plays over the years, but none quite like this. Rudy Wagner's entrance was understated yet commanding, each step carrying the weight of inevitability. Calculated victory. Cameron sat at the far end of the table, his usual bespoke suit appearing somehow diminished beside him. Mindy clutched her legal pad like a shield, her couture dress and flawless makeup unable to conceal the defeat in her eyes. The board's decision was unanimous. The chairman announced, sliding documents across the polished table. Douglas Technologies accepts Wagner Analytics acquisition offer, effective immediately. Rudy assumed his seat, Cameron's seat, at the head of the table. "Thank you, gentlemen. I assure you this transition will be smooth," his voice carrying absolute authority. "M. Ritter will handle the paperwork." Jeanette began distributing documents with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Douglas, you'll find your resignation agreement on page 3. The terms are non-negotiable." Cameron's hands trembled as he reached for the papers. "This company is my life's work," he whispered. Rudy corrected quietly. "The board has accepted your resignation, effective immediately." His gaze shifted to Mindy, who seemed to shrink under his scrutiny. "As for you, Mrs. Douglas, the evidence of your involvement in corporate espionage has been turned over to the SEC. I suggest you contact a criminal defense attorney." "Rudy, please," Mindy's voice cracked. "We can talk about this." "We can. Security will escort you both out," Rudy interrupted, his tone dismissive. Your personal items will be shipped to your attorney's offices. As security personnel appeared at the doorway, Sam entered bearing a bottle of champagne and crystal flutes. The contrast was stark. While Cameron and Mindy were led away, their empire in ruins, Wagner Analytics' team began to assemble. Bobby Yates raised his glass in a toast. To the new king of Boston Tech. Jerome Fisher grinned from his seat, clearly satisfied with his investment's return. North of 100 million and climbing. Not bad for a software developer, wouldn't you say? The champagne flowed as Rudy's team celebrated their victory, while the young board discussed upcoming SEC proceedings. As the proceedings with Jeanette continued, Rita Hayden outlined their public relations strategy for the upcoming merger announcement. Bernadette Short, now officially part of Wagner Analytics, shared insights about Douglas's international operations. Sam approached his friend, holding up his glass. Was it worth the wait? Rudy surveyed the room, his room now. The company he had built had not only survived, but had grown strong enough to devour the very predators who had once dismissed him. His platform, combined with Douglas Technologies' infrastructure, would transform the industry. Some people mistake kindness for weakness, he replied, thinking of the long nights, the careful planning, and the silent patience. That's their last mistake. The aftermath played out exactly as he had orchestrated. Cameron faced federal charges for his role in the corporate espionage scheme, while Mindy was disbarred. Her legal career ended by the very ambition that had driven her to betray him. Years later, Rudy encountered Mindy at a coffee shop in Back Bay. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by department store brands. Time had not been kind to her carefully maintained facade. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, almost desperately. "I was wrong about you." Rudy adjusted his custom-made suit, the fabric worth more than her monthly salary now. "No, you were right about one thing," he replied, his voice carrying no trace of the pain she had once caused him. "I didn't have a future. I had to build it." He left her there, stepping into his waiting Bentley, a testament to the empire he had built from the ashes of her betrayal. His driver pulled away from the curb, leaving Mindy to watch another man drive away from her. But this time, she was the one left with nothing but regret. In the end, Rudy had achieved more than revenge. He had proven that success was the sweetest revenge of all. The merger of Wagner Analytics and Douglas Technologies created one of Boston's largest tech companies, transforming the industry. In the landscape of his achievements, he had constructed something enduring, something of profound significance, a creation that would imprint an indelible mark upon the world. And he had accomplished it all without ever compromising the essence of who he was. A man who never forgot, never forgave, and never left a debt unsettled. Epilogue. 5 years later, the federal courthouse hummed with palpable anticipation as Cameron Douglas emerged from his final appeal hearing. The once confident tech titan, who had formerly commanded boardrooms with authority, was now a shadow of his former self. His tailored designer suits had given way to off-the-rack attire, and his once impeccable hair was now streaked with gray. The relentless 3-year legal struggle had exacted a heavy toll, both on his finances and his physical well-being. "Mr. Douglas, any comment on the court upholding your conviction?" Reporters clamored as he navigated through the throng. Cameron's lawyer raised his hands, intervening. "My client maintains his innocence and will be exploring all other legal avenues." Yet, in their hearts, they both understood it was the end. The evidence compiled by young Bird was unassailable. A corporate espionage scheme intertwined with securities fraud charges had culminated in a 5-year prison sentence and millions in fines. Cameron's passport had been surrendered, his assets frozen, and his reputation lay in ruins. Across town, in a modest law office situated above a Chinese restaurant, Mindy Douglas, now reverted to her maiden name, Mindy Dhy, sat across from her bankruptcy attorney. The designer handbag she had once flaunted had been sold off months prior, along with the bulk of her luxury possessions, all to cover mounting legal fees. "The disciplinary board's decision is final," her attorney explained with gentle firmness. "The disbarment is permanent, given the extensive evidence of corporate espionage." Mindy gazed down at her hands, where the faint tan line from her second wedding ring remained barely visible. The criminal charges had been negotiated down to obstruction of justice and conspiracy, resulting in house arrest and probation instead of incarceration. However, The revocation of her law license, coupled with the civil lawsuits filed by former competitors of Douglas Technology, had left her in financial ruin. "Have you considered the job offer in Providence?" her attorney asked. Mindy nodded numbly. A paralegal position at a small insurance firm, the only place willing to hire her despite her notorious past. The salary would barely cover rent on a studio apartment. Meanwhile, Wagner Analytics had become the crown jewel of Boston's tech scene. The merger with Douglas Technologies had created an industry powerhouse worth billions. Rudy's platform, enhanced by Douglas's infrastructure, had revolutionized financial technology. The company now occupied a gleaming tower in the financial district, its logo visible across the city skyline. Sam Nunez, now Chief Operating Officer, stood in his executive office reviewing quarterly reports. The friend who had once brought coffee to Rudy's cubicle now managed global operations for one of tech's most influential companies. "The London expansion is ahead of schedule," he reported during the executive meeting. "Asia-Pacific markets are exceeding projections." Around the conference table sat the team that had helped orchestrate Douglas's downfall. Jeanette Ritter had become Chief Legal Officer, her aggressive tactics now focused on expanding Wagner Analytics' global reach. Young Bird headed compliance and risk management, his SEC experience proving invaluable as the company navigated international regulations. Rita Hayden's PR expertise had shaped Wagner Analytics' public image, transforming the hostile takeover into a story of corporate responsibility triumphing over corruption. Bernadette Short, who had switched sides at the crucial moment, now led their mergers and acquisitions division, her network proving invaluable for further expansion. Bobby Yates, semi-retired but still serving on the board, couldn't help but smile during quarterly meetings. The promising developer he had mentored had built something beyond even his expectations. Jerome Fisher had leveraged Sterling and Ross's early investment into the legendary success story had proven their faith in Rudy's vision to be exponentially rewarded, transforming the venture capital firm into the premier destination for promising fintech startups. Yet it was Rudy Wagner himself who had undergone the most profound metamorphosis. The betrayed husband, who once labored 18-hour days within a cubicle, now stood as a business icon. Profiles in Fortune and Forbes depicted him as a visionary who revolutionized financial technology, his net worth soaring into the billions. Still, those who truly knew him understood that his deepest satisfaction stemmed from something else entirely. He kept a newspaper clipping in his private office, the article announcing Cameron's conviction, not out of sentimentality, but as a steadfast reminder that patience and precision remain the sharpest weapons in any arsenal. The coffee shop encounter with Mindy did not mark their final meeting. Boston's business circles were intimate, and paths had a way of crossing. He saw her once more at a charity gala, where she had taken a job distributing name tags. She attempted to catch his eye, perhaps hoping for mercy or some form of reconciliation. But he walked past without acknowledgement, his new wife, a brilliant quantum computing researcher, elegantly accompanying him. On another occasion, he spotted Cameron performing community service, collecting trash along the highway as part of his pre-sentencing agreement. The former CEO glanced up just in time to witness Rudy's Bentley gliding smoothly past. The ultimate victory, however, lay not in their downfall, but in the empire Rudy had forged from their betrayal. Wagner Analytics had become a launchpad for innovation, its technology fundamentally reshaping how markets function. The company's charitable foundation, led by Sam's wife, funded STEM education initiatives, ensuring that future generations would have the opportunities to transform their own potential into lasting success. Among the mementos in Rudy's office rested another artifact, the wedding ring Mindy had cast onto their dresser years before. He did not keep it out of attachment to the past, but because it reminded him of an essential truth. Some people mistake kindness for weakness, patience for passivity, quiet determination for lack of ambition. His revenge had not merely been about destroying those who had wronged him. It had been about becoming everything they had claimed he could never be. The industry press loved to analyze his success, attributing it to technical brilliance, market timing, or strategic genius. None of them understood that his true innovation had been in patience, in building something so strong, so inevitable, that by the time his targets realized the danger, it was already too late to escape. 5 years after the takeover, Rudy sat in his penthouse office, reviewing plans for Wagner Analytics' next expansion. The company had surpassed his original dreams, but he was not finished. Success, he had learned, was not a destination but a continuous journey of growth and dominance. Sam entered with their morning briefing. "You saw the news about Cameron's appeal?" Rudy nodded, his attention fixed on the expansion proposals. Final nail in his coffin. "Mindy's leaving Boston," Sam added. "Took that job in Providence. Apparently, she's living in some studio apartment above a laundromat. Life has a way of teaching humility," Rudy replied, his voice devoid of sympathy. "Speaking of teaching, how's the Foundation's new coding academy coming along?" The conversation shifted to the future, to building, growing, expanding. The past was useful only as foundation stones for greater achievements. Cameron and Mindy had thought they were writing the ending of his story. Instead, they had only provided the catalyst for his true beginning. The sun set over Boston's financial district, Wagner Analytics' logo illuminated against the darkening sky. In his office, Rudy reviewed reports from their Asian markets, his mind already plotting the next decade's conquests. He had learned the most valuable lesson of all. True power is not in quick victories or emotional outbursts, but in the patient, methodical construction of an enduring legacy. An empire destined to outlast any personal vendetta. The company had grown beyond revenge into something far more significant, a legacy that would influence global markets for generations. And somewhere, in a small Providence apartment, a former lawyer who had once sneered at a mere software developer watched her ex-husband's latest business triumph announced on the evening news, understanding too late exactly what kind of future she had walked away from. Success, Rudy had proven, was not just the best revenge, it was the only revenge worth pursuing. Everything else was merely a detail in a much grander design. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.